The first of the mage tests in Frieren is an odd one. In a way, it's a glorified pub fight. It's kind of designed to murder the majority of the participants. Frieren's mage test arc is the most controversial of material animated so far, because it's really quite a departure from what came before. You're following Frieren's cozy little journey so far, all's well. Then suddenly everyone's trying to kill each other just to get a certificate. But it's designed to introduce one particular question about the nature of magic, and this guy's view of it. The fact that it's supposed to kill so many people isn't a bug, it's a feature. What's the point of a test that kills off so many people with so much potential? It does have more going on than just a fight. It's testing for quite a few key features in a mage, but in a way that fits with this elf's ideology. Let's start with the test itself. The mage exams are held every 3 years, and it seems to be common knowledge that a combat test is part of it, but the first test you see is specifically there to weed people out. There are no emergency outs like the golems. If your favourite mage fails here, they just die, because they were too weak for the Continental Magic Association. The test sets the standard that this will be as much about fitting the association's view of magic as it is about, being a mage. And the killing fields are something our party has walked into to save on money for snacks. The test on its surface is simple. Get bird, survive. Making the bird so hard to catch seems like that's the challenge, but for a lot of teams it basically boils down to a fight before the finish line. You can deny any other team victory through murder. Why the style? It's unassuming looking, but features fantastical abilities. It is a decent stand-in for the mages. The style has all the skills needed for this test. The high sensitivity to mana, the ability to stay stealthily hidden long enough to keep it, and the speed to get away. The animal is a nice representation of the qualities a mage needs. The first part of the test is the plan making. The second is the plans colliding, failing, and then the third, that's an old man out of options trying to punch his way through. The thing kind of is, the test is deliberately set up to be this, because that's what they're testing for. So the question might be, how many great mages is it fair to kill so you can control one excellent one? Although it's not the morality, but the test's role on a meta level that's kind of made it the most controversial arc in Frieren's first season. The slice of life, week-to-week adventure gets interrupted for some murder time. In some ways, this was something different. But to look at the pacing of the manga, not as much so. It's more down to how the adaptation was structured. It cuts out before we go back to cozy adventures, making the mage test feel different. More different. Differenter. The pacing of the anime adaptation gets weird too, thanks to expanding our action and moving a flashback around. But I don't think the turn in tone is really a departure, but an expansion. In previous little arcs, we could have some bits that took a while to pay off, but this one goes a bit longer term. It's something that's common once a manga has found its feet. It can take aim at something more grandiose, with the confidence that the audience is willing to go along with it. This is kind of weird the first time when you cut to a new character's view for an extended period, but it's necessary to expand things outward. It was time to take more space to set things up for an even greater payoff. Although the first test in particular gets a bit weird with it. There's even characters directly pausing to give a lecture. There's a lot of discussion of how magic works, of approaches to it, but in terms of action, it's a lot bigger. In scope, it's wider, like the Werbel Ubel chat. It's the furthest from the main story that we've gotten so far. It's two brand new side characters discussing their personal approaches to magic. Same with the lengthier Denkin sections. It can leave a first-time reader or viewer just sat there thinking, okay, so? But it all works better once you know where it's going. The first time around, it comes out of nowhere, but I think a lot of Frieren benefits from going back through, and the first mage test is one that really does. Frieren alternates between the quiet slice of life and bigger arcs. It's just that the first-class mage arc was a longer stretch than what came before. It's when it gets more ambitious in its storytelling. It feels like it gets further away from those moments that made Frieren special, but they're still in here, especially when revisiting, now knowing the new characters better. There's a lot more depth to the test too, starting with how to introduce this new wider cast. The teams are set up. So, the test challenges mages to work with others. You get the primary characters completely split up. It's like when you're sent off for some assigned group work when you're at school and you have to spend all this time with people you never speak to and have nothing in common with. Given that the real purpose here is to introduce different new characters and perspectives, it means each group has an anchor to the main cast. But with the test being so big, it's not all of them. There are plenty who are basically extras, fodder. But in the core groups we do follow, who gets the best team, do you think? Frieren gets these two. Fern gets these two. I think Fern absolutely lucked out with the selection personally. The biggest problem is personality clashes, but her team goes all the way. All three of them make it through all of the tests, so they're definitely the best lot, right? Out of 57 exam takers, only 18 get through, so the test broadly fits its goal to ensure a more select group for the next rounds. If it's a good test though, I think it should come down a little beyond the random selection of your teammates. It should be solvable with strategies and skills. But is it? The tests aren't really a tournament unless you're really squinting. It's a series of challenges with more in mind than strength. Tournament arcs are often markers of growth, but Frieren's growth isn't really in power, but like making friends. Maybe a speed dating would be more of a challenge to her. But the mage tests we get aren't massively a tournament arc. The first challenge is probably the closest since it's designed to boil down to a fight. So how do you strategize through such an arbitrary challenge? Pretty quickly, the teams we follow figure it out. Getting the style isn't the test. Being alive at sunsets with the bird, that's the test. Frieren's approach begins with observing. First observing her team to figure out how to wrangle them, and then she can actually observe the bird. A methodical period of research, and coming up with two of the biggest gambits we see through the entire test. First polluting the water with mana, and then tearing down the barrier. In both cases taking advantage of that anything else goes bit of the rules. Otherwise they lean back on her extreme experience to deal with the other team's plans and pull off these tricks. It's an issue with the test we're going to come back to. Fern's team is a very different dynamic. They've secured their capture, but figured out what the test is really about. Fern has been using a similar approach, but doesn't have the same authority over her group. So it's tenser. There's ambushes and fights, but ultimately the attempts of Fern's groups to use smart tactics and avoid unnecessary combats, that solves the test. They hide out until the end. Good strategies along with a bit of luck. We get to know more characters, plus we get a different view of magic and the philosophies behind them. Then we get Denkin's group. He also slips into the role of protagonist in this arc. It's kind of his big intro. For a lot of it, he's the star. We follow Fern, Frieren, and new guy Grandad. When we start to follow him, their current plan has gotten messed up, and he's calmly coming up with another, trying to stay a step ahead. Their conversation about the nature of the test, what it's testing or isn't, is a highlight that Denkin doesn't like the approach the test is taking. The shift to Denkin's point of view is maybe the weirdest thing about this arc at first. Since he turns out to be a pretty major character, it's a nice intro to him, but at the time you probably don't know him from the also-rans who are all over this test. First time you might be wondering why focus on him when your favourite character is probably off doing something interesting. It's always painful when that happens. But Denkin's focus makes a lot more sense in hindsight. This test is designed to introduce him. He figures out the plans of others, he comes up with his own. It's really fun watching him methodically go through the options. Maybe he has strong teammates, but Denkin comes out well from this in terms of strategy and skill. By the halfway point of the mage test, most teams have abandoned their bigger plans and were well into the action. It's all essentially going to plan, just not the plan of the contestants. So what's the point of this test? What are they testing for? As a test for mages, there's the obvious. Working with other mages without necessarily sharing their viewpoints or morals. But discussion from the test's proctor, is that it? Invigilator? Whatever I'm calling them. They're also testing luck, strategies to make your own, or just having the plot on your side. There's no set solution to the test. It's an exercise in critical thinking and combat skills, with the tidy benefit of trying to trim the participants down to just those willing to use violence for the association. Or those who are very good at working around that. I think the strategies used by the main three illustrate the benefits of it as a test, but also some of the issues that come as a means of narrowing competitors down. Frieren strategizes, but it comes down to her knowledge of old spells, mana, generally being a more experienced mage than the majority of the test takers. Elves are smurfing. Fern survives with combat skills, but one of the winning moves for her is actually interpersonal. She manipulates another team, lies to them, emotional sleight of hand. But their combat and magic skills definitely get them most of the way, which lets them ride out the end of it in a cave hiding. Denkin strategizes, he re-strategizes, he demonstrates he's the strongest mage there, aside from some old great mage who probably shouldn't be taking it anyway. And then when all is lost, he just punches his way through. It might be an arbitrary task, but the skills they're showing could serve them for any number of first-class mage duties. They don't always choose who they work with. They're expected to be able to plan around their limitations. The possibility of combat not always lending itself to your own strengths. Plans and the ability to make plans, or the raw talent to coast. I'd argue Denkin is kind of the MVP of this test for most of the criteria. Even if he's bested, nothing really beats his backup plans. To a point, it's a battle royale masquerading as a specific challenge, but not entirely. It does actually reward other tactics quite well. A team like Lambs can use subterfuge to get by. The test just doesn't care about the lives of those taking it, which makes sense for the Magic Association's view of mages. But so far, we've only really been presented with a different view, which brings us to the out-of-universe point of the test. It's load-bearing. This test comes at a point in the series where we've gotten to know our core cast quite well, but this arc has to expand the world. It's ambitiously trying to set up quite a lot of characters and to set the stage for the next few tests with their unique conditions. It introduces different interpretations of the role of mages. We don't get as much time with our faves. We even skip out on Stark for the whole duration. But there's Frieren turning into a teacher of these two, Fern's work on her own, and even a real highlight of a Himmel flashback. And this test lets us contextualize all that we've learned about them. The comparison between the main beliefs we've been exposed to so far and the prevailing ones. A magic guild that doesn't care. Why in the time of peace are the tests so bloody? Is because it's being run by the Continental Magic Association. During all 3 tests, we get more flashbacks to its founding, a larger through line about the association's nature. We see each character's view of magic under the microscope, but the tests themselves are demonstrating 3 different views as well. The first test comes from a mage who views the takers as disposable, that they should know the risks when entering. Any test taker who dies here deserves it, since they weren't up to the standards of the test in the first place. It's a private club, and no one is owed membership. The test kind of exists to put us in Denkin's shoes, to seize the type of experienced mage who can blow away these newcomers, but doesn't believe in doing so. That there's plenty who don't kill unnecessarily and view magic completely differently. We get a lot of viewpoints in contrast to Frieren's, who we already know. Many come down to a simple issue. What's the test worth to you? Denkin and Frieren don't believe it's worth killing to be a first-class mage. Those running the tests believe it's worth killing most people to find one that's good enough for them, if it helps them control that one. It makes the tests out to be short-sighted. To find solid mages, you throw away tons of candidates who have plenty of time and potential to become one. There's little interest in nurturing the mages. It's an excuse for a brawl, which makes it fitting that in the end, the climax of the test is Denkin's smackdown on a team who have already had a member killed, being wailed on by someone unwilling to go all the way, but forced into the rawest expression of violence. It fits the point of the Magic Association that Seri isn't about a ward of peace. The deaths are to be expected. They're even part of it, to cool the herd. The 2 mages mainly pushing back against the nature of the test and its looseness with life for Denkin and Frieren. Both so experienced that it's questioned why they're even there, at all, and they both disagree with its philosophy. It isn't fair, but the Magic Association isn't either, and the test should be flawed because it's supposed to be selecting for a flawed view of the world. The test's conditions itself are as much of a demonstration of that view of the world as we get from the competitors discussing it. The First Mage Test is more than a fight, but only because of the people who are taking it. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Comfy Lilin. If you liked this, then there should be some more on screen. Alright, cheers.